It started on a Tuesday, the kind of Tuesday where the sky hangs heavy and even the wind seems tired. The courtroom buzzed with low murmurs and shuffled feet, but at the center of it all stood something much simpler, a golden retriever named Marley, a dog. Just a dog, some might say. But to two people seated on opposite ends of the courtroom, Marley wasn't just a dog. Marley was family, memory, love and loss all wrapped into one ball of golden fur. Kara sat on the left, her posture rigid, her hands clenched in her lap. She wore a navy blazer and a fixed expression, as though she'd rehearsed it in the mirror. Every morning for a month. Her lawyer whispered something to her, but she didn't nod or blink. On the right sat Ben, slightly disheveled in a worn sweater and khakis, dark circles under his eyes. No lawyer, just him. The judge entered, an older man weathered from years of passing through human drama, with eyes that had seen too much and still hoped to see something honest now and then. "This is an unusual case," the judge began, "but not an unfamiliar one." Both parties claimed legal ownership of Marley. They had once been a couple, 5 years together, two living under the same roof and Marley arriving sometime in the middle, like a bridge they didn't know they were building together. But the relationship had ended. Badly. And Marley had become the last thread that connected them. Kara spoke first. She spoke in measured tones, her voice unwavering. Marley had her name on the adoption papers, she said. She had paid the adoption fee. She took Marley to the vet, to training, to the park. She fed him every morning and bathed him every weekend. Marley, she insisted, was hers. Ben didn't interrupt. He didn't shake his head or sigh. He just looked at Marley, sitting obediently next to the bailiff. The dog was calm but watchful, ears perked, eyes darting between the two familiar voices. When it was Ben's turn, he stood slowly, pulling a folded photo from his back pocket. It was wrinkled like it had lived in that pocket for weeks. He handed it to the judge. "I don't have paperwork," Ben said. "I don't have receipts. I have moments." The judge studied the photo. Marley as a pup, nestled in a blanket, on Ben's chest while he lay asleep on the couch, clearly taken by someone who loved them both. Ben continued. "She picked him out, yes, she paid the fee, sure. But when Marley was sick at 2 in the morning, who cleaned up the floor? When fireworks went off and he shook under the bed, who laid there with him for hours? When she was traveling, for work, who took time off to stay with him?" His voice cracked but didn't break. "He knows me, not because I fed him, but because I stayed." The judge was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at the dog. "Marley," he said gently. The dog turned his head. "Come here." Marley looked around. Then, without hesitation, padded toward Ben. Not rushed, not frantic, just sure. He sat at Ben's feet and rested his chin on his knee. Kara looked away. The judge spoke softly. "In matters of property, law has rules. In matters of the heart, truth has weight." He granted custody to Ben. There was no celebration, no victory lap. Just a long exhale from Ben, a nod of gratitude, and Marley pressing his body closer, as if he, too, had been holding his breath. Kara left without a word. That night Ben didn't take a selfie, didn't post a caption. He sat with Marley on the living room rug, watching the fire flicker, scratching behind his ears, whispering things only a dog understands. Weeks passed, then months. Life didn't become magically easier, but it settled. Ben found work again, found a rhythm, started jogging with Marley every morning, the leash barely taut, as if they were moving in sync with something deeper than routine. And as seasons changed, so did Ben. He became quieter, less reactive, more aware. Losing everything but one thing that mattered had taught him that distractions are thieves dressed in urgency, that the quiet act of showing up, for someone, for yourself, is louder than all the noise this world throws your way. Because it wasn't about the dog, it was about being the one who stayed, the one who didn't walk away when love required more than comfort. Marley, unaware of the symbolism, continued doing what dogs do. He chased sticks. He barked at squirrels. He curled up in bed beside Ben when thunder shook the windows. But in the spaces between those things, he became a reminder, a soft, breathing anchor to the truth, that showing up is everything. That consistency is love in its most honest form. That sometimes the right to keep something or someone isn't written on paper but carved in quiet, invisible acts of devotion. In the end, the judge had made a decision. But Marley had already chosen, and Ben, through heartbreak and humility, had learned the kind of self-discipline that can't be taught, only earned. And maybe that's the real lesson. The things that matter most are not the ones we claim. They're the ones we prove, over and over again, through patience, presence, and love without a spotlight. Marley grew older as dogs do, silver beginning to blend into the gold around his muzzle. His steps slowed, but his loyalty never did. And Ben too aged in his own quiet way, not in years but in perspective. He began noticing things he never used to. The warmth of sunlight through a window, the way Marley's tail would thump even in sleep when he heard his voice, the peace that comes from a life uncluttered by bitterness. There were lonely days, of course, days when the silence of the house was louder than any argument ever was. But it was a different kind of silence now, not emptiness but stillness, a space where healing could live, where regret didn't echo as loudly because it had been softened by grace. One afternoon, Ben sat at a park bench while Marley napped beside him in the grass. A young couple walked by with a new puppy, laughing as it tugged at its leash. Ben smiled, not with envy, not with sadness, but with understanding. He had been there. He had known that kind of hope. And he had also learned what it took to keep it alive. Not long after, Ben began volunteering at the local animal shelter. At first, it was just a way to be around animals, to do something kind, but over time, it became more than that. He saw himself in every hesitant dog and every confused face sitting behind metal bars. And he saw Marley in their resilience. He'd walk them, feed them, sit with them for hours, whispering the same patient comfort he once gave Marley. He never rushed, never demanded. He just showed up. Again and again. One day a teenager came into the shelter, nervous, withdrawn, shoulders tight from carrying burdens too heavy for his age. He was being forced to do community service, and his resentment was clear. Ben didn't scold him, didn't preach. He simply handed him a leash, nodded toward a dog and said, "He's nervous too. Just walk." Weeks passed. The teenager changed. Slowly, quietly. He began staying longer, talking more, smiling. One day he looked at Ben and said, "You really care about them, huh?" Ben only replied, "Caring is a choice, every day." That boy eventually adopted a dog of his own, and Ben realized something profound. The legacy we leave isn't in grand gestures. It's in the small, repeated decisions to care, to stay, to be steady in a world that teaches us to chase more, want more, demand more. Years later, Marley's time came. As all lives do, his had a beginning and an end. But in between, he had lived a life full of presence, of love without conditions. And when it was time, Ben lay beside him on the floor just as he had during those thunderstorm nights, whispering, "I'm here. I'm staying." The vet said it was peaceful, that Marley went with a sigh, a soft release. Ben held him for a long time after, and when he finally stood, he didn't feel empty. He felt full, grieving, yes, but not hollow, because Marley had taught him what so few ever learn in time, that love isn't in what we get, it's in what we give without asking anything in return. Ben kept volunteering. He started fostering dogs who had been abandoned, too old, too sick, too broken for anyone else to take. And with each one he gave the same quiet devotion he once gave Marley. Neighbors started calling him the Dog Man. Kids waved when they saw him on walks. People came to him with questions, needing advice. He always listened, always offered the same truth. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to show up and stay. One day, he received a letter in the mail. It was from Kara. Years had passed since the courtroom. She wrote that she had watched from afar, that she had seen what he'd done, what he'd become. She admitted she had been lost then, caught in a storm of her own pain. She thanked him, not for winning, but for showing her what it looked like to truly love something enough to let it go. Ben folded the letter carefully and placed it in the same drawer where he kept Marley's collar. Not out of pride, but out of peace, because by then he understood the deeper truth. Marley had never really been something to win or lose. He had been a mirror, a teacher, a quiet guide into a life lived on purpose, and Ben, through all the heartache, had chosen a path most overlook, a path of patience, of presence, of showing up even when no one claps, no one sees, no one validates, because the life that matters most isn't the one others approve of. It's the one that lets you sleep at night with nothing left unsaid, no love left ungiven. And that kind of life? It starts not with big decisions, but with small quiet ones, like sitting beside a dog when it's scared, or staying in the room when it would be easier to walk out, or choosing over and over again to be the person someone can count on, even if that someone has 4 legs and a wagging tail.